All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the interface of Photoshop, identify the different regions of Photoshop, and begin to understand the mechanics of how this application works. So first, what we have here is our canvas. And when you're working in Photoshop, you have the option of setting up something called a canvas or an artboard. And in future exercises, we'll look at the differences between a canvas and an artboard, but this is the area in the document where my artwork will go. The light gray area around the outside is a no man's land. Nothing goes out into this area, okay? On the right, I have my panels. There's a number of different configurations for the Photoshop application. If I go under Window, I go to Arrange, I can change how the documents are set up. Under Workspace, there are a number of different workspaces. And most of the time for the beginning class, we will be working with the Essentials. So I'm going to go down to Essentials. And if you ever get your workspace discombobulated, just go down and click Reset. In this case, Reset Essentials. So that's going to reset the essentials on your canvas on your Photoshop. So if I go to Window and I go down to Workspace, you'll see that there's a number of different workspaces. One for 3D, one for graphics and web, one for motion, one for painting, one for photography. And the idea with these is that when I'm doing specific types of work, I can configure the panels on the right to reflect the type of work that I'm doing. So if I go to Window, I go to Workspace, and I choose 3D, I am in the 3D workspace. Now, I'm going to go to Window, I'm going to go to Workspace, I'm going to choose Graphic and Web, and the idea is that I'm being given the tools that are going to be helpful for me if I'm working for an image that's going for the web. Go to Window, Workspace, Motion, and if I'm doing things like animation or video editing, which you can do some limited video editing in Photoshop, I would set my canvas up in this mode. And there's a couple of different types of animations that can be done, a frame by frame animation or a sequential type animation that can be done inside of Photoshop. I go to Window, I go to Workspace, and I go to Painting. So if I want to do illustration, I've now set configured the Photoshop interface for this type of work. And what you'll see is that the palettes or panels on the right change depending upon which of those settings I choose. So here I have swatches, I have brushes, and I have other elements as well. Let's go up to Window, let's go to Workspace, let's go to Photography. And so the idea is that this is an ideal setting for working in or editing photos. So like I said, 90% of the time, we're just going to be working in the essentials. So I'm going to go back and click there and set it to essentials. Now, over on the right, I have my panels. Okay, and the idea is that they're stacked on top of each other, and I can click from one panel to the next to access the content of that panel. Okay, and I can take a panel and I can turn it into a palette. So a panel is snapped into the right, but a palette is loose. So I'm going to loose the layers palette. I'm going to click and drag that free. I want to have that layers palette knocked out as separate, and we're going to work a lot with the layers palette in the first couple of sessions, and then we'll add additional palettes along the way. Okay, so that's how you take a palette and loose it. I can click on the tab here. I can move the palette around. If I double click here, I can collapse it and then click again to expand it. If I click the little X, it will close it. And then also what you'll notice is that a lot of the panels will have a little pancake in the upper right hand corner. And when I click that pancake, it's going to allow me to make modifications to that panel. So I can do things like with the layers panel, like flatten or merge layers and so on and so forth. convert to smart object, right? Those are options available. So lots of times they'll say, click on the pancake for layers, or click on the pancake for paths, right? And we'll spend a lot of time going through understanding how to use the layers palette. Now, if I decide that I no longer want to dock a palette, I can just grab it and drag it and drop it back in, right? Then I can click and I can drag it free. And I can resize the palette and move the palette anywhere on the screen, okay? So that's how I use my panels or palettes. If you go under Window, all of your panels or palettes are listed, okay? And when there's a check next to a panel or palette, that means that it's currently visible. Sometimes you can get one panel or palette stuck underneath another one, and you can't find it. So what you can do is go to, like, for instance, layers, and I can click and turn it off, and then go back to Window and go to layers and click again, and it'll pop back up. So if you ever lose a palette, that's one good way to find it. All right. So that's the idea of a palette, and these are panels. And you can turn on a panel anytime you want by going to Window. Let's say I want my history palette or panel, I click history, and now my history panel or palette is currently visible. And then I can collapse that by clicking there. All right, let's stop here. We're going to come back and continue in the next video.